Hello and welcome. We are diving into week 6, which is The Office. And I have a feeling that a lot of you have a desk that looks like this, right? I saw so many pictures of pretty desks that were, completely clear, but I thought, no, let's not lie. This is pretty much what our desk looks like. I wish I had that much sheet music on my desk. I want to know who this person is. That looks cool, right? But the truth is we have tons of stuff on our desk, and we have a lot of different places now that we consider our office. And so that is the first thing that I want you to deal with. And I think it's important that you deal with this really with everyone in your family who is involved in office supplies or using computers. We are now to the place where most children will have some access to your iPad, to your laptop, to your computer. It's no longer this idea that dad's office is a sacred space and you can't go in there. So I think the first thing you have to decide is, where is all this stuff going to live? Because the other thing that has changed is that we used to have computers in the office, and now we have laptops all over the place. And so we have kind of working nooks. And so I want you to sit down with everybody. I want you to take out a piece of paper, and I just want you to ask yourself, where are all the places in the house that office stuff is going to live? Maybe you actually have an office. Maybe you have a couple desks strewn around your home. Maybe you have a kitchen table, and that's mostly where people are doing their work, and it needs to be cleaned up every day. Where does that stuff go? Where is it staged for when you're using the table for eating dinner? So when it comes to the office, again, I think we've kind of gotten away from this traditional idea of offices, and so our mentality has to shift with that too. And yet I feel like our supplies, office supply management is still kind of stuck in this is where we work. And this is why the office supplies are here. So one thing I've been working on, with my husband, one thing I've been working on with my husband is we have been designating spaces, and we've also been communicating about when we want to use these spaces. And we've been trying to come up with a plan for when our 6-year-old, who's almost 7, how are we going to incorporate her into these spaces as well? So I want you to ask your family about that. What's the purpose of this space? Some of you will have an office space that is a dual space. It works for homeschooling and a parent that works from home. Maybe it's going to be where one of the kids is doing homework, but it's also going to be where mom pays the bills. Okay, so designate these office spaces or rooms in your home. Decide what the purpose of each space is, and then you can begin to get a sense of what needs to live there in terms of supplies. Because I think the problem right now is that we've kind of oversupplied all of these spaces, and then we're drowning in office supply clutter. So designate the places, decide what's going to be happening there, and then also kind of mentally make a list of, okay, what supplies do we need to support that activity? And the other thing I want to throw in here is to not be a dinosaur, okay? I'm already struggling with this, and I'm only 32, but I was probably the first generation that grew up with a computer in my home that was used for school, right? I remember by 5th grade, we had a computer. And so technology has just changed so rapidly in the last 20 years, and it's just going to continue to grow exponentially. So if you have a fax machine, if you have a landline phone, and some people have landline phones for different reasons, and that's fine. But if you're holding on to big, clunky technology, I think you just need to acknowledge that it's probably already outdated, and it certainly will be within 2 years. Now, I'm a huge advocate of being intentional about what I buy, and I'm not frivolous. I'm quite frugal, so I don't throw things out that I know I'm going to use. But I think when it comes to technology, a lot of us we're still stuck 5 years behind, and we don't realize that when we buy something that's electronic, it's probably only going to live for 2 to 4 years, right? That's just kind of how it works now. So we need to begin shifting our mentality to think of electronic stuff as disposable or things that we're going to kind of phase out or give our children. But because of that, the good news is we don't have to think about keeping all of this stuff for such a long time. So I want you to be, as you're going through this process, just examining the technology that you have and asking yourself, is this the best way? Is this machine or gadget or whatever going to be relevant in a couple of years? And you may still choose to keep it. This is just a dialogue I want you to be having with yourself about your stuff. So the one tip that I think stood out to me as I was doing research about offices was to get rid of the drawers. And at first that freaked me out. I was like, what? Get rid of your drawers? Where would I put everything that's in the drawers right now? But I liked the idea of it. I liked the idea of having like a really nice sleek table. And so here's what I did. So what I did was I got rid of all of the stuff in my drawers, and I actually was surprised that almost everything in my drawers found a home somewhere else. There were a couple things left, and I put them in like a Tupperware box because I knew it was going to be temporary. And I thought, okay, I'm going to put this in this Tupperware box, and I'm going to pretend that I don't have a drawer, and I'm just going to see like, would this stuff live on the desk? Would I put it in a jar? Would I put it somewhere else? And I was really surprised with how much I did not need those drawers. The other thing that I really had to fight within myself was I have a lot of pens. I really love blue Bic pens. And I bought, I think like 600 at Costco one time because I thought, great, I'll never need pens ever again. Costco is a trap for minimalists. Okay, don't go there. And so I have all these pens in my drawer, and I had to ask myself, like, how many pens do I need out? And so I finally decided 3. I mean, I probably only need 1, but that made me panic. So I thought, okay, 3. So I'm going to put 3 pens in a jar on my desk, and 1 pencil and 1 highlighter, and I put the rest in a box, and then I put that away in the closet of my husband's office. So my desk is in our bedroom, and his desk is in our office schoolroom. So I put it up, and I thought, well, I don't need to see all of the pens that I have. I don't need that many choices. By the way, they're all the same pen anyway, so that's even sillier. And it just cleared up all of that space. That was the majority of what was in my desk drawer. A lot of trash, a lot of random stuff, and then I got 1 plastic baggie for like all the things I didn't know what they were. USB plugins, cords, cards, I don't know, all sorts of things. But it was just a little baggie. So I put that together, and then I also tossed that in the same place where the pens were. I thought, you know what, I'm going to toss that there, and if I need it, then great. But eventually I'm going to go through those things again and kind of do the, okay, if I haven't touched this in a year, do we need it at all test, right? So I want you to think about that, because I think it could be a really powerful thing for a lot of us. You know, we tend to fill up the space that we have. So when we allow ourselves drawers, we just toss stuff in there. All right, this next one's really hard for me too. Go paperless. And what's funny about that is that when we bought this business 2 years ago, I was like, the business needs to be paperless. And I was so confident about that because I just knew that I wanted a copy of everything in case like the house burned down. I don't know why I took it so seriously about this business, but I was like, we need to go paperless. And I had a great app on my phone. I just take pictures of stuff and it automatically syncs to Evernote, and it's amazing. But when it came to doing that for our personal life, all of a sudden I felt myself kind of backpedaling, and I was like, no, we can't do that. Or we can't possibly get rid of those papers. And I had a real emotional block around that. And it surprised me because I had already been, aggressively trying to become paperless on the business side. So I've made huge progress. Okay. We still have 1 drawer of paper right now, like a file drawer. But I think, it's my plan to go over that. I was thinking over the winter, I was going to go through all of that slowly and scan it and go paperless. But in the meantime, we've kind of tidied up the space and gotten it down to just 1 drawer. So I feel pretty good about that. But I want to encourage you to go paperless because I think it will be an easier way to store your stuff. I think it will give you peace of mind. I think it will free up your space. And I think paper just has a way of dragging us down almost more than other clutter. It's like we see it in a pile and we know there's something important in there, or I'm going to lose that piece of paper. Maybe it's like our holdover from childhood where we like lost our permission slip or our book, checking out the book card thing, and so I just have this panic in me that I'm going to lose papers and it's important and it's going to cause problems. But it's not true. Now we can snap a picture with our phone, keep everything in the cloud, and and we're great. And it's actually better. And then it's easier to access. And we can find things more quickly. So I'll put some resources in the Facebook group and on the website about Evernote, the app that I use, and just tips for organizing your electronic files. I haven't gone through that process fully myself again on the personal side, so I'm not sure what my master organization plan will be, but I'm not too worried about that because I know I'm just going to look at a website and it's going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to do that. All right. I touched on this a little bit, but putting backups high up in the closet. So again, when I was starting to go through our office, we would have like 6 rolls of Scotch tape. And it was responsible of us to buy that and get a good deal, and it doesn't take up that much space. And I wasn't upset that I had 6 rolls of Scotch tape, but I don't need to see them. We have this really high up shelf in the closet in our office, and I thought I'm just going to put all of our extra school supplies, all of our extra office supplies up, so that we only have one of everything out. And then we don't have to care for all of the other stuff. We don't have to think about it. And if we run out, we'll have a backup. I don't mind storing some office supplies, especially because we do my husband and I both work from home and we homeschool the kids. And so I don't mind having that stuff around. I mean, I think we can tend to go overboard, but I've noticed we go overboard more on the art supplies rather than the office supplies. So that was a much bigger squirrely point. When I started going through everything, it wasn't the Scotch tape that was dragging us down, right? It was like the boxes of crayons and the 3 or 4 different kinds of markers that have somehow migrated into our bookshelf. And so, office supplies to me weren't a huge thing to fight for because they were just taking up even all the extra office supplies weren't taking up that much space in the closet, but it did feel very freeing to put them up high. Okay, so the other thing I read that I thought was very clever was this idea of boxing up stuff that you aren't sure if you need or not. Just box it up, just put it in a box, stick it in your closet, and then force yourself to live off the stuff that's on your desktop. So these guys were like ultra minimalist, and so they were kind of here's your one pen, here's your one highlighter kind of guys. And they just said, challenge yourself, put very little out, and then see how much you really need the other stuff. And so I thought that was interesting, and I think I don't feel brave enough to do that just yet. And I think I did a pretty good job anyway, but some of you want an extra challenge, and I think that was a really interesting challenge to keep in mind. So box it up and then see what you miss. All right, I pulled this quote, and it says, if you purify your soul of attachment to and desire for things, you will understand them spiritually. If you deny your appetite for them, you will enjoy their truth, understanding what is certain in them. And this is kind of a brainiac quote, but I like it, and I thought it was particularly poignant for Office Week because I think that as we're tackling our office space, it's a good time to also consider our screen time. Because now we no longer use our computers just for working. It's so intertwined with our, hour by hour living and our leisure and our shopping. I mean, it's just everything now. And I think it's important that we use them as tools, but we not become so attached to them, emotionally attached, where we're just waiting for that ding, checking our email, scrolling through the sales all the time. There's a healthy way to do that, and there's an unhealthy way to do that. And we're going to talk about that more in week 8 when we talk about self-care and just protecting our mind and living in a positive way. But I think the office is a good time as you're going through all of your supplies, and I know there's a lot of them. I want you to be thinking about, why do we spend so much time on the computer, and how can we compartmentalize it so that we can get our work done and make clear lines between work and leisure? Because I know that's something I struggle with, and I've gotten a lot better at it, where, I sit down and I think, okay, for these 2 hours, I'm going to be working. I leave, I go spend time with my kids, and then later I have a very clear, okay, this is my leisure time. I'm going to watch something on Netflix, right? And I have to be that intentional about it so that it doesn't all bleed together. Now, for those of you who work from home, you may have more office stuff, and that's okay, right? Like, I record a podcast every week, and so I have more equipment than some of you, and that's totally fine. Again, minimalism is about being intentional about what we have and thoughtful about what we're using our space for. My hope for you is that you can get rid of enough stuff and be purposeful enough about this space that it brings you peace and that you do the best work there, right? So purify your soul of attachment to and desire for things, and then you will understand them spiritually. I think what he's saying here too is that when we don't need things, we appreciate how we can use them as an option, right? When we need things, we have this fervor, this anxiety, this anxiousness about being attached to stuff and being scared that it's going to go away. But when we detach ourselves from that, and we're kind of like, I don't need that stuff. I could find a way to live without it. All of a sudden, we appreciate its usefulness so much more. And I think it just creates a purity around our office experience. So I'm really curious to see what your experience is this week. And especially for those of you with teenagers, I'd like to hear how you incorporate them into this planning process, how you create a space for them, how you store their stuff. You know, I'm not used to my children getting to have an opinion about that kind of stuff yet. So I'd love to hear your ideas and what your family goes through this week. So thanks so much for following me on this minimalism challenge. Let's dive into offices.